Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show and happy Friday. I want to tell you that today is our 900th episode, but it's also an anniversary for us. Tomorrow marks 4 years to the day since the Megyn Kelly Show launched. Back then, we were an audio-only podcast, just a few staffers. I think literally there were 4 of us. There was Steve Krakauer, my executive producer. There was Natasha, who's a producer as well. There was Debbie, Canadian Debbie, had just joined us like right before we launched. And there was Abby. Am I forgetting anybody, Steve? That was it. Yeah, that was it. Yeah, he's saying that's it. And I was sitting in my kids' playroom in our New York City apartment doing the show with my microphone. Look, we took this picture back at the time. You could write on the walls. It was fun because it was like a playroom. Anyway, there I was in this tiny little desk that Abby got for like $100 on Amazon because it fit in the little corner, and really didn't know whether anybody at all would be interested in listening to the show. And just so grateful to you all for making it clear that some people would, and that I could do the news honestly and without fear and make a living at it and be a voice, I hope, that speaks reason in a sea of dishonesty and obfuscation and gaslighting, which defines our media today. Anyway, very, very grateful. We spoke with Glenn Greenwald in episode number 1. And I think Steve Krakauer told me he still might be our most frequent guest on the MK show. I love Glenn. We disagree on some things. We agree on some things. I totally respect him and his intellect. He's always an interesting conversation. And that's the essence, right, of the show. Agree or disagree. That's how I feel about all of you. Agree or disagree isn't really the point. The point is to share facts. I'll offer my opinion, as you know, about a lot of them. You may reject my opinion, totally fine. But I think we're all on the team of sanity, right? Like, we're not so far gone that we're totally outlandish and we're lying to ourselves in the name of advancing our political agendas. So in any event, thank you. I want to say we pulled just a little bit of our opening message. These are sort of my opening thoughts to the audience on that day 4 years ago. Here's a little bit. I need to create a show that I control, in which my only fealty will be to the audience and to the truth. So that's why I'm here. You know, I'm sick and tired of the news today, and I hope to be a place that you can come for information that you trust, right? That you know I'm not in the bag for either side or for anybody, and a place in which opinions, even heterodox opinions, can be expressed freely, and we can debate ideas, any ideas, right? And that you guys are sophisticated enough and smart enough to handle it. Isn't that funny? I hadn't listened to that. Steve pulled that. But it's very similar to what I just said. That remains the mission of the show. And I think it remains the secret of the show, the secret behind the success of it. So thanks to all of you. Very grateful. And here's to many more years together to come. Okay, let's get to the news. You may have heard Vice President Kamala Harris is finally making her way to the U.S.-Mexico border tonight. It only took the border czar close to 4 years and more than 10 million illegals crossing. Joining me now, Jesse Kelly. He is the host of I'm Right on TheFirstTV, which you can watch at YouTube at Jesse Kelly DC. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. You know how much my family and I love our dogs, right? Yes, even my little Strudwick troublemaker. I can't even imagine life without them. They've got a great life, but some dogs are not so lucky. And that is why I'm so glad to tell you about Delta Rescue. It's the largest no-kill, care-for-life animal sanctuary in the world. They have rescued thousands of dogs, plus cats and horses too. They provide all the animals with shelter, safety, and most of all, love. And they've been doing it now for more than 45 years. Delta Rescue relies solely on contributions to stay open, and giving can bring tax benefits to you as well. Speak with your estate planner about how you can grow your estate while helping animals in need. Check out the estate planning tab on their website to learn more. We love our Thunder and Strudwick, but would love for other dogs who need this kind of shelter, attention, and care to find it too. Visit deltarescue.org today to learn more. That's deltarescue.org. Jesse, welcome back. Great to see you. So the border czar is going to the border, and this is the routine. My audience knows this is what she reminds me of when she talks about her newfound commitment to cracking down on the border. She's just like this guy in SOT 4.
Now you understand. Anything goes wrong, anything at all. Your fault, my fault, nobody's fault. It don't matter. I'm gonna blow your head off. It's as simple as that.
Slap some bacon on a biscuit and let's go. We're burning daylight.
She's John Wayne. She's that tough. You buying
Megyn,
it?
If you only knew how bad that brought me back to my childhood, that movie was Big Jake. That's one of the great John Wayne movies of all time. I used to watch that movie with my dad. We didn't even do that much together, but we watched John Wayne movies, and that's one of my favorite movies of all time. That's one. Two, I'm sorry, I'll get to Kamala in a second. Happy anniversary, Megyn. I didn't know this was your 4-year anniversary. I didn't know you started out as audio only. I've been watching the Megyn Kelly Show, I feel like, forever. But that has to be more of a pain for you than me, because you're a woman and you're always having to change outfits. I have like 4 of these I wear, and I just swap them out. No one knows, no one cares.
The hair and makeup are a bigger PIA than the outfits, to be honest. But yeah, we did for a full year. We were audio only before we went video too.
How about that? Happy anniversary. Anyway,
thank you.
Look, the Kamala Harris campaign, it's politics. She's a politician. You're used to fake. I'm used to fake. Everyone watching, listening, everyone's used to these people pandering and being fake. That said, this is the fakest campaign I've ever seen in my life. The word gaslighting, gaslit is so overused. People use it the wrong way all the time now. But if you're using it the appropriate way, which is to, create something out of thin air where there's nothing there, that's the entire Kamala Harris campaign. Doesn't know anything about the border. She's never been to the border, doesn't care about the border, doesn't know anything about the economy, doesn't know anything really about anything. It's just a campaign of changing accents and claiming she owns a gun. And it's another step in the most fake campaign I have ever seen. And I've been watching politics pretty closely for about 2 decades now, Megyn. I've never seen anything like this. It's giving me the worst case of overconfidence going into November, because there's no way the American people will choose this. It's terrible. There's no way.
I mean, you'd like to think, but the polls, here's her latest ad. I mean, think of that John Wayne clip as you watch this ad about our border czar, 10.4 million illegals that we know of, like on the books, who have entered during her time in office. You'd never know it from this. Look at that one.
Kamala Harris has never backed down from a challenge. She put cartel members and drug traffickers behind bars, and she will secure our border. Here's her plan: hire thousands more border agents, enforce the law and step up technology, and stop fentanyl smuggling and human trafficking. We need a leader with a real plan to fix the border, and that's Kamala Harris.
Oh my God, the dishonesty. Her plan is to enforce the law. What? Well, what happened to that over the past 4 years?
There's kind of lying, and then there's just lying on a level that's obviously soulless and evil to the level it rises to demonic. When you get elected president of the United States of America, as Biden, Harris did, President VP 3.5 years ago, and on day one, not day 2, but on day 1, you tear apart every single thing Trump did to give us a secure border. You throw open the doors of our country. And on top of that, you've taken vast quantities of taxpayer money to bus and fly in people from Venezuela, from Cuba, from various Haiti, various countries by the tens of thousands. You've done that for 3.5 years, only to turn around a couple months before the election and claim you're going to be some hawk. I mean, again, like I said, there is shading the truth. There's lying a little bit. No, honey, you don't look chunky in that dress. And then there's doing what they've done, doing the most evil thing. One of the most evil things I've ever seen an administration do to the United States of America. That's what this administration did with immigration. To now claim you're a hawk is Bam. That's evil.
It's amazing. It's really ballsy in its grandiosity. You're right. There's like the normal lie that you get from your politician, and then there's this attempt to rewrite history. 10.4 million under Biden-Harris, 2.3 million under Donald Trump. I mean, the numbers say it all. The news every day says it all. The number of Americans being murdered, children being raped by illegals in this country, not to mention what's happening with the so-called legal migration in town after town. She now wants us to believe, as I say, she's John Wayne, not that he was into border enforcement, just that he was a tough guy and you didn't mess with him. That's who she thinks we are going to buy her as. And here's how she actually feels. This is just a bit, it's a montage of Kamala Harris before she was running for president, talking about her real feelings about, quote, undocumented immigrants. Satu.
It is wrong to somehow suggest that an undocumented immigrant is a criminal. Being an undocumented immigrant is not a crime. I know what a crime looks like. An undocumented immigrant is not a criminal. 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 An undocumented.
All right, we could go on. This goes on for a full minute, courtesy of End Wokeness on X. Obviously, she doesn't understand the law, and she should, because she's actually a former attorney general. An undocumented immigrant is a criminal if he or she sneaked across the southern border. That's true. If you have your friend from London come visit you and he or she overstays their visa by a day, we can argue about it. That's not what the problem is here. We've got literally tens of millions now in the country having broken the law to get here, and then an unhealthily high percentage of them, Jesse, commit additional crimes against U.S. citizens once they get here.
And they tell you it's not happening. Maybe the most evil part about it, you brought that up just a couple minutes ago, Megyn. They're here. They are raping, murdering American citizens, the drug trafficking, the American jobs, the driving up of rents, of mortgage, of health care, the degradation of American schools. All this happens when you mass import people from other countries. But this administration is so soulless and evil, they'll look you right in the face and tell you it's not happening, that crime is down, that we need these people, otherwise the strawberries won't get picked, or whatever insulting thing they say about them or us. They're always insulting one of the two groups as they try to justify replacing mass quantities of the American people. And that's really what it comes down to. Sorry, Megyn, I'm going to filibuster for a second. That's really what it comes down to. That's why all these people do exactly what they do when it comes to mass migration. And it's not unique to America. They're doing it in Canada, the UK, Germany, France. The truth is the Western civilization countries are now led by evil people who want more power than they have, more power than they're allowed to have, because this is, after all, a place where their power is limited. They hate that. And the thing that's really, really holding them back is the American people. The American citizen who wants a decent government, wants a decent country, wants a secure border, believes in his freedom of speech and things like that. The American citizen, in the eyes of the American politician, is the greatest evil on the planet. It's not China or Russia or jihadists or something. It's the patriotic American citizen. So what do? You can't just shoot them like they did in the Soviet Union. We have a different set of laws here. So you just replace them. You don't have to shoot them. You don't have to throw them all in prison. You just snatch up another 20,000 people from Haiti and stuff them in their small town, and soon you've crowded them out and destroyed them. It's really, it's been going on for decades, but they've ramped it up a lot recently. It's really evil, Megyn. It's awful what they're doing.
Yeah, it's absolutely awful. We had James O'Keefe on the show yesterday talking about what's happening to the children, and then I heard follow-up reporting on that. Young girls and boys being drugged with sleeping pills to get them across the border so they don't speak up. They don't say. A lot of them wind up in sex trafficking. Then we have no idea how to find them. These guys, we don't know what their motivation is trying to cross the border, and they know they'll get in more easily with children. So they go back, they use the same kids, they send the kids back, they come back across. They're just being used as pawns in these adult criminal games. This is all because of her. It's because of her and Joe Biden and the gall to turn around now. Here's Mark Cuban, he's basically a barnacle on Kamala Harris's behind. He's so attached to her, trying to defend her border positions like, she really had nothing to do with the border. Listen to the nonsense that spews out of this mouth in SOP 3.
But I don't think you can have an open southern border.
No, I agree. And she agrees, too. She said the exact same thing.
She had a chance.
Yeah, but, Joe, there's a lot of COOs that when the CEO leaves for whatever reason, come in, take over, and have completely different policies and approaches. Right? That's just the way it works. When you're second in command, you do what your boss tells you to do. He delegates authority to you.
But the border was supposed to be her.
Yeah, but it's still the same thing. It's his policies. What he said to her was, you go down and you use diplomacy to try to improve, to try to reduce the flow, the migration of people across the border, right? And when they finally came around, and it took too long, I agree, but when they finally got there, now look at the results. It didn't take a wall, but yet the crossing numbers are where Trump's were pre-pandemic, at the same number. So it worked. So what she did actually worked.
Got it. So really, she was just the number 2, even though she was the border czar. She had no power. And now, thanks to these glorious 2 who are in office, the numbers are down as low as under Trump. Just to that last point, everyone knows that Joe Biden only cracked down on that border in the past few months because he was facing re-election. He kept it open and civ-like for almost 4 years. Why did he wait until 3 months before the election to do anything about it? Because the Democrats, including those 2, have an ideological commitment to open borders. Go ahead, Jesse.
No, you're right. And it's gross and it's obvious to anyone who pays attention. I don't think this stuff is as effective on kind of the normie norms as it used to be, these kind of lies. But I do want everyone to understand that they opened up the border on purpose. They didn't try to implement some kind of, more progressive or nice sounding policies or whatever hippie gobbledygook these people try to spew in the news every single day. They got there and they ensured the United States of America would have an open border. So everyone from around the world could come in. That's what they did. They did it on purpose. It was an accident. And 2, Mark Cuban is actually an interesting case, Megyn. You see these people pop up occasionally, and these people who are real members of the elite, if you will, whoever that may be, a CEO, an actress, whoever it may be, and they go beyond the normal, I love Joe Biden type thing. That's honestly to be expected. Our culture, all of it's gone so far left that if you're Jamie Dimon, if you're Warren Buffett, if you're one of these big shots, and they ask you who you're voting for, everyone knows you're going to say, I'm going to vote for Joe Biden, yada, yada, yada. Give the reporter a pat on the head and you move on. But then there's Mark Cuban, as you mentioned. This dude embarrasses himself regularly. You can't turn on the television or social media for 5 minutes without seeing Mark Cuban and his San Francisco lesbian haircut spewing out all this craziness about how Kamala Harris is wonderful and she's the best and she's going to secure the border. But when they take it that far, it should be a tell. For everyone watching and listening, it should be a tell. When you see a member of the elite take it that far, there's a reason behind it you don't see, and I don't see. And I don't know what that reason is, but almost universally, it's one of 2 things. Mark Cuban, he has a financial interest, I would guess, that he needs their help with. I'm not going to guess what that might be. When you're a billionaire with that many different businesses and boardrooms, who knows what it might be? Maybe it's an SEC approval. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's a merger. I don't know. He has a financial interest he needs their help with, or darker, this is the kind of thing they make Netflix movies about, or he's being blackmailed by someone. And that's just how that works. When you have a billionaire who embarrasses himself on television like that. Well, that's a big problem too, Megyn, is how many people on the right or even kind of in the middle have signed on for open borders because they would rather pay $7 an hour than $16 an hour. It's a problem.
That's exactly right. So we went over this after the first presidential debate, but I'll just give you a couple. Just so we're clear on what she and Joe Biden did when he took office. Executive orders issued day 1. They moved to suspend remain in Mexico, where you could not seek asylum here in the United States and be in the United States. You had to remain in Mexico while you raised that issue, which was good because if and when asylum was denied, which it is supposed to be in the vast majority of cases, we didn't have to deport you. You were already somebody else's problem. They suspended it. They halted construction of the border wall, day one of their administration. They initiated a review of policies that have effectively closed the U.S. border to asylum seekers. They wanted to reopen the border. They began a review of the fast-track deportation procedure known as expedited removal, which allows immigration authorities to remove an individual without a hearing before an immigration judge. They didn't like that. They wanted slow-track deportation or no deportation at all. They issued an executive order to reverse Trump-era policies that targeted low-income immigrants, including calling for a review of the public charge rule, which makes it more difficult for immigrants to obtain legal status if they use public benefits. Right. We have enough needy of our own. We don't need other countries needy coming in here and getting on our Medicaid rolls and taking food stamps and housing vouchers. Sorry, they're somebody else's problem and they should remain that way. They expanded the U.S. refugee admissions program, rescinded Trump policies that limited refugee admissions. They reversed the Trump policy banning refugees from key regions and enabled flights from those regions to begin within days. I could keep going. That's her and her boss. And now they want to pull the John Wayne routine. By the way, here's another old clip of Kamala Harris making really clear where she stands on those who are in this country illegally now.
Down, down with deportation! Up, up with education! Down, down with deportation! Down, down with deportation! Up, up with education! Down, down with deportation!
Down, down with deportation. Up, up with education. Down, down. She doesn't want to deport. She's not going to get rid of a single one who came in while she was vice president.
Megyn, there's a Aristotle quote that I actually had on my phone. I wanted to pull it up just to make sure I nail it exactly. So just so everyone watching and listening doesn't think that this is a new problem, having the people in your government open up your border, flooding your country on purpose to replace you. This is a direct quote from Aristotle. Quote, "It is also a habit of tyrants to prefer the company of aliens to that of citizens at a table in a society. Citizens, they feel, are enemies, but aliens will offer no opposition." That is how these people look at the United States of America. Like I mentioned earlier, these people in their minds, they wake up in the morning, they go to sleep at night, and they are concerned about the patriotic citizen. What is going to hold them back from their grand plans, from 15-minute cities, from taking away your car, from transing your child, from what is the one thing that is holding these people back from doing all the things they want to do? It's not China, and it's not Russia, and it's not whoever else it may be. It's you, the patriotic American citizen. And so they're trying to replace you as fast as humanly possible. I'm going to tell people something else, and it's going to hurt to hear. If Kamala Harris loses this election, and I think she will, I hope she will, but if she does lose this election, any way you slice it, Joe Biden has been one of the most successful Democrat presidents in the history of the United States of America. We can mock him all day long for the fact he can't talk, he can't walk, and his wife is a elder-abusing witch. But none of those things matter because he remade this country in ways that are going to be impossible to reverse, Megyn. They just simply will. People can lie to themselves all day long about how we're going to mass deport this many people. We don't have the stomach for that at all as a people. We proved that during COVID. A lot of these gains, which are losses for the country, but gains for Democrats are permanent. And it's really soulless what they've done to this country.
You're not wrong. You look at that Trump interview with Cheryl Atkinson, where she said, "You're really going to deport," she wasn't taking a position, but she was saying, "Are you really going to deport the 10 million plus?" He says it's 21 million, and it's definitely more than 10.4 because that doesn't include the gotaways. She said the first time you put a mother on a bus, separating her from her child, who the mother may have had here, right, who then the child becomes a U.S. citizen, you're going to have a media meltdown around you, the likes of which you've never seen. And Trump was like, "You're right," and then seemed to suggest he's going to focus on the criminals, the ones who have committed additional crimes once they're here.
Of course.
Because Cheryl raises a good point. Like, the media will, if he tries to, that mother should go. She should go. She's here illegally. She broke the laws to get in. If she wants to be with her child, she should take her child with her. But Cheryl has a good point that the media will jump all over something like that. And Trump basically conceded the point that he's going to focus on the ones who committed additional crimes. So that proves your point, Jesse. The country has been fundamentally changed, and it's not going to change back.
No, we're so soft now, Megyn. I am hopeful we can regain some of the hardness that made us great, but we're so soft. As of right now, I'm not sure that we can save ourselves. Everything you just said is true, and I do believe the next administration will cave on this. Even if Trump doesn't cave on it, Republicans in the Congress will cave on it. They won't be able to grab their ankles for the media fast enough. The second it's a crying baby, a crying mom, like you mentioned, a mother getting on a bus, the PR campaign. I want everyone to stop for a moment and remember when Trump was first elected. Remember the PR campaign, and that's exactly what it was. It was an operation against the kids in cages. Remember the kids in cages? You had everyone and their brother, AOC down on the border, crying in the fences. Little Lupe, I'm so tired. Everybody, kids in cages this and kids in cages that. Because of what was this in response to? The most basic border policy in the world, the most humane border policy in the world. You separate kids who show up with an adult because you don't know who's who. And like you mentioned in the beginning, Megyn, these freaking drug dealer scumbags will take these poor kids and they'll bring them with them. So you have to separate them, figure out who's who. So child separation was it's benign. It's not even right or left. It's basic border security. They ran, I think it was a 2 or 3 week PR campaign. I'm so sad. Trump administration backed off it immediately, backed off of child separation. That was off of child separation at the border. But you're telling me we're going to be rounding up families of 12 and putting them on a bus back to Guatemala? I'll believe it when I see it.
Mm-hmm. Do we have that soundbite, the Cheryl Trump exchange, guys? We're pulling it over. Anyway, it was, as I said, we'll drop it in for the podcast later.
We need to guard that spirit. We have to guard that spirit. Let it always inspire us. Let it always be the source of our optimism, which is that spirit that is so uniquely American. And let that then inspire us by helping us to be inspired to solve the problems that so many face, including our small business owners.
I want to move on because Kamala Harris she had so many absurd moments in that Stephanie Ruhle interview, Jesse. I don't know if you watched the whole thing, but they were just, there was nothing there. It was, as usual, a huge air sandwich. And one of the moments that we and others made fun of yesterday was her attempt to answer the question about, okay, you want to make housing easier for people. You want to create more housing. But how are you going to cut through all the red tape? That was the question. How are you going to cut through all the red tape that stands in the way? And she meandered on red tape into nonsense about holistic this, holistic that, and left us all just feeling utterly confused. Here's a reminder.
How does the federal government cut through all that red tape and get down to, the suburbs of Pittsburgh and say, we're going to have to build some affordable housing here?
Part of my goal and the plan would be to create 3 million new housing units for rent and for ownership by the end of my first term. It includes also what we must do to cut red tape. You're absolutely right. I know that we have to reduce the red tape and speed up what we need to do around building. Some of the work is going to be through what we do in terms of giving benefits and assistance to state and local governments around transit dollars and looking holistically at the connection between that and housing and looking holistically at the incentives we in the federal government can create for local and state governments to actually engage in planning in a holistic manner that includes prioritizing affordable housing for working people.
Okay, she said absolutely nothing. And can I tell you something? When I watched, I know, Jesse's laughing. He's laughing. His head is in his hand. When I first saw this, I'm like, she knows nothing. Obviously, she knows nothing about her, quote, plan. And I thought, it was a good question by Stephanie Ruhle. That is a problem with the red tape and all that. You know what? I went back. Kamala Harris had given remarks earlier in the day about her big economic plan. It's from that. It was Kamala Harris who raised the red tape problem. Listen, this is her earlier that same day. Listen.
We will cut the red tape that stops homes from being built. As president, if things are not moving quickly, I will demand to know why and I will act. I will work with Congress, workers and businesses, cities and states, community groups and local leaders to reform permitting, to cut red tape, and get things moving faster.
There she is, red tape. She raised it. Stephanie Ruhle was basically saying, you said red tape. How? She said nothing. Nothing.
Megyn, I have to be honest. You know, I have a sick sense of humor. Part of me, a very, very, very tiny part of me wants her to get elected for 4 years just so I can watch your head pop off in frustration for 4 years, because a detailed person like you who's all about, details and research, you always know more than the person you're interviewing. It's going to drive you insane. You're going to lose your mind. And 4 years of watching this person. Well, no, I can tell. It's wonderful. I think it's hilarious, I should note. But it's just, she doesn't know. Let me explain it this way. She's 59 going on 13. Has anyone ever known or watched a movie about or a documentary about a professional athlete who's a complete and utter moron? I'm not saying all professional athletes are that way. A lot of them are very smart, accomplished people, but everyone knows a guy. You immediately pictured a guy. He's just an idiot. He's 30, 40 years old, a millionaire. He's a moron. He can't talk. Well, why is he that way? Because he never had to learn anything in his entire life. Whatever his upbringing was, sports programs, always a superstar, got through college, and soon you can find yourself as an adult male and you can't write out a sentence. You can't speak in any complete form. You sound like an idiot. That's Kamala Harris in a more extreme form. She's 59 going on 13. She doesn't know anything about anything. It's not that she doesn't know anything about housing, Megyn, or red tape or the border, she doesn't know anything about anything because she's never had to know anything about anything. She got her start in politics. We don't have to cover all that again, but by being a companion to Willie Brown, he gave her start. And since then, in California,
that's not all he gave her.
If you talk to anyone in California, Megyn, quit. Since then, in California,
it's Friday.
It is Friday. But in California, if you talk to people who know there, every office she ran for, it didn't matter what it was, AG, senator, she was treated with the ultimate kid gloves in the media because she is the identity politics candidate. She's a woman. She's a minority. She's a far lefty. I mean, if you could build one for these people, you'd build her.
Double minority.
She's never had to answer tough questions, doesn't know anything about anything. I had Jeffrey Clark, former U.S. Attorney Jeffrey Clark, on my show. He dug into it. This is one of those research nerds like you, Megyn. She never tried a case. He couldn't find an example of one case. Even as AG, as DA, she was never lead counsel on a case. She doesn't know anything. She's 59, going on 13. She knows nothing about anything.
I saw that Twitter thread. It was amazing. I'm going to have to listen to that show, Jesse. That's a good one. You don't find her inspirational? Because that's another lane she's trying to fill. This was from her speech to the Economic Club of Pittsburgh just the other day. Been dying to get this on. SOT 11.
We need to guard that spirit. We have to guard that spirit. Let it always inspire us. Let it always be the source of our optimism, which is that spirit that is so uniquely American. And let that then inspire us by helping us to be inspired to solve the problems that so many face, including our small business owners.
No?
You see what I mean? You know what that is, Megyn? That's the 13-year-old girl on Instagram putting up some inspirational quote that her girlfriend shared with her. Live, laugh, love. Like she's 59 and that's how she talks. She doesn't, and it tells you, honestly, it also tells you who her staffers are. Look, I'm sure you're not exactly a huge fan, nor am I, of somebody like Obama or Hillary Clinton or someone like that. But someone like Obama or Hillary Clinton, yeah, they'd be dirty commies, but they would have around them a policy person who would have policies I disagree with, but they would have specifics. There would be a laundry list of specific things. We're going to do this, this, and this. Kamala Harris has such bad staff turnover. This has been something that's been talked about a lot for the last 3 years. She's so horrible to work for. Everyone walks in and they turn around and walk right out the door, that she doesn't even have a brain around her. So, I mean, these speeches are prepared, Megyn. It's not like that idiot is speaking off the cuff like you do every day. These are prepared. Someone sat down and wrote that on purpose. And then they rehearsed it. And after they rehearsed it, they look in the mirror and said, yeah, nailed it. That's how these people think.
Inspire with the inspiration that inspires us. That's my plan to turn this economy around. That's how I'm going to do it. And also to pursue dreams, aspirations, and inspirations too. All of it. And ambitions, aspirations, and dreams, and inspirations. And they'll inspire you. That's Kamala Harris's plan. Holistically. Exactly right. Now, one group she's not particularly inspiring right now is Catholics. I'm Catholic. Are you Catholic? You're a Kelly. You don't have the second E.
I'm not Catholic. I just regular old Protestant. We're at war, Megyn. I think we're still at war. I don't know.
Okay. I thought the Protestants had a second E in Kelly.
Well, I don't know, Megyn. I don't know anything about my background. I was always told that stuff you do where you can find out about your ancestry, I was told they turn it into the government. So I've been too afraid to ever do it.
I know, same. I was too afraid to do it ever since I saw the movie Hitch, where he takes her and it turns out she's a direct descendant of a serial killer. I don't need that. I know in my heart I come from a long line of mediocrity. I don't need it confirmed. Okay, so she decides for the first time, she's the first candidate in 40 years to say no to this thing called the Al Smith Dinner in New York City. Cardinal Dolan puts it on. A bunch of very well-known Catholics go, and every presidential candidate on both sides of the ticket since Walter Mondale has said yes to this. It's one of those things where it's funny and it's a chance to laugh, and it's kind of bipartisan in that both sides make fun of themselves pretty brutally. And it's amazing. I mean, speechwriters write the whole thing for each candidate, but it's genuinely funny. I remember the one line at the last one I was at, or one of the last ones, Barack was up there, and I think he was up against McCain at that time. And he said, my first name was given to me by, my mother or my grandmother. My second name was given to me by somebody who thought I would never run for president, which was very funny. So that's the whole spirit of the event. You get up there, you make fun of yourself, and that earns you points with people. They like to see you do that. And Catholics are a huge voting bloc. There's several billion of us, and big in the Latino community that she is struggling with right now. Most Latinos are Catholic. And she decides for absolutely no reason to blow this thing off. She's not going to go. She just said she's just going to be campaigning. Well, every presidential candidate ever at this point in the contest has been campaigning. This is just a big middle finger to Catholic voters, which leads Newt Gingrich to get on Fox News and say the following. Take a listen.
The truth is that I think she's afraid to go to the Al Smith dinner. She's the most anti-Catholic presidential candidate since James G. Blaine in 1880. Wow. And all of the anti-Catholic laws passed in that era were called Blaine laws. So you can imagine how strongly he was. Look, when she was a senator, she's interviewing in public in a senatorial hearing nominees who are Catholic, and she says, you belong to the Knights of Columbus. Well, the Knights of Columbus is over 2 million people voluntarily get involved, have pancakes on Saturday morning, raise money for charity. The idea that there was somehow something mysterious about this whole Catholic thing, you could tell that she has an edge. Many people on the left dislike the Catholic Church because it is a bulwark of belief in right to life. It's a bulwark of belief in God, and it's a bulwark of belief that, in fact, our job is to try to understand what God wants us to do, not try to become gods of our own. So there's a huge underlying hostility between the left and organized religion. By the way, her vice presidential candidate as governor closed every single church in Minnesota during COVID, but allowed the Mall of the Americas to stay open so you could have retail therapy.
Right.
Now, right. I mean, I don't know how much more anti-religious you could be than Tim Walz. Well, and remember, as you know, Callisto was the ambassador of the Vatican, and she refused to put up the gay pride flag on the grounds that it's a direct insult to the Vatican and to the beliefs of the Pope. The minute we left and the minute Biden took over, they put up the gay pride flag. I mean, this necessity to insult you, to go into your space to make you submit to whatever their latest wacky idea is. And I'll guarantee you that both Tim Walz and Kamala Harris have a deep instinct for making the rest of us subordinate to their weird ideas.
Really interesting. Extra long clip because it was worth hearing. That was Newt on Larry Kudlow on Fox Business. So what do you make of that notion, Jesse, that she's anti-Catholic, she's anti-religion, and that explains her aversion to appearing at this dinner?
Well, communists are not anti-religion, they're anti-your religion. Communists don't share power with other religions in any country where they've ever taken a hold. And our communists, you can deny that's what they are all day long. It's exactly what they are. They are exactly the same. It's not an accident. There's an FBI memo courtesy of a whistleblower announcing their intention to infiltrate the Catholic Church. These endless spitting in the face of Catholics, Christians, Orthodox Jews is not an accident either from the left. They crucified the priests and raped the nuns in Spain. They massacred the priests, burned down the Orthodox churches in the Soviet Union and China. They didn't have to worry about the Christians, so they spent their time torturing to death the Buddhist monks and burning down the Buddhist temples. Communists do this every single place they go because communism is not a political ideology. It is a religion, and it is not one that shares a nation with any other religion. And people can twist themselves up into knots trying to figure out why would they do. I don't understand. It's just a progressive thing. They have already declared war on you. If you are a human being of belief, they believe you are the enemy. You believe something higher than they are, and they are coming for you. You can choose to respond or not, but that is the way it is. And I know that was a little dark and heavy for a Friday, Megyn, but it's the friggin' truth.
Well, I mean, think about it. There's, first of all, 52 million Catholics in the United States. There's 1.3 billion Catholics in the world. And she can't make one evening of time for the ones in the States and in New York City who are trying to give her a chance to be self-deprecating and to charm people, right? Just the most minor of reach outs and a very positive one. She can't make the time, but she can make the time to go on RuPaul's Drag Race, where weeks before she appeared, they had a trans person with the breasts that had been chopped off, a simulation in a bag, bloodied, women's body parts, bloodied in a bag with razors cutting the breasts and fake blood dripping down the body. That she's got plenty of time for, Jesse, plenty of time.
Well, she also can't laugh at herself. On top of the communist religion thing, Megyn, just like we talked about how she's 59 going on 13, she's so insecure. It's why the laughing, we all point out the laughing because it's so obvious all the time. And no matter what, on things that aren't funny, she's the most insecure 59-year-old woman I have ever seen in my lifetime. Normally, by the time you're that age.
I mean, Madonna might be up there. I feel like Madonna's giving, right? With all the nudie pictures at age 60, it's weird.
Well, it's very weird. And it's gross now. It's ruining my image. Anyway, but no, you're right. She doesn't even know who she is, Megyn, and somebody like that can't laugh at themselves. It's honestly sad if you allow yourself a human moment. I want to know when the last time she had a genuine laugh in her life is. Her whole life has obviously been fake, pretending to be this, pretending to be that for this campaign. And soon you're 59 years old, you know nothing about nothing, you know nothing about nothing, but you're trying to be president of the United States of America and fake your butt off to see if you can get all the way into the White House. She could never show up at the Al Smith dinner and poke fun at herself. How could people who are that insecure could never do that in a million years?
It is tight, notwithstanding all of this. Latest polls out of Marist, likely voters, Arizona, Trump up 1. Georgia, Trump up 1. North Carolina, tied 49-49. Down in Texas, this is Emerson polling. Texas, Jesse, you're home. Trump is up only 5. And he's up. He's going to win Texas, but he's only up 5. And Ted Cruz is up only 4. Once again, Ted Cruz up only 4. It was too tight against that moron Beto O'Rourke, too. Kind of disturbing because, what's happening in Texas and what happened in Virginia and Pennsylvania and some other states is all these leftists from other states move there because they love, of course, the culture and the laws and the freedom, and then they change it. And even Texas is getting so purple that Ted Cruz is in danger and Trump isn't annihilating her in the numbers.
I'm going to say something. It's going to sound weird, but I actually have a tremendous amount of peace with this election that's coming in November. And it's not because I'm not worried about it, right? I want Trump to win. I want Kamala Harris to lose. But let me explain, Megyn. Countries do have tipping points. It's the most overused term in the world, but tipping points, it is real. And we have for decades, we have done two things in this country. We have dumbed down and demoralized our own population because we allowed these dirty commies to take over the education system. So Americans don't even understand basic civics now. So we've dumbed down our own people. And then, as we've already explained several times during this show, we have imported others en masse. The Biden administration has also naturalized as citizens more people in the last 4 years than anyone else has. And they've mainly done this in swing states. Why do you think that is? Why do you think they've done that for over 100,000 citizens in the swing state of Arizona that was decided by 11,000 votes? There is a tipping point in this country if we don't reverse some things. And that tipping point is simply this. If we've dumbed down enough people and we've brought in enough people, and then we don't even have to go into fraud or whatever that may be, but we can talk about that too, that's fine. But we can get to a point where it doesn't matter who we run and it doesn't matter who they run, we can't win. That there is, unless we reverse certain cultural trends, either we're already there or we will get there if we don't reverse it. Let's try to reverse it, I should point out. But if we don't reverse it, that tipping point is coming, where it wouldn't matter if you resurrected George Washington himself from the dead, running on the greatest platform in the history of mankind, and he was going up against the spawn of Satan himself. You might not be able to win as a Republican in the country. And that's why you keep your borders secure. And that's why you don't let a pink-haired freak educate your kid in kindergarten about why America sucks.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you're exactly right. I mean, it was this time last year that my 7th grade daughter went into history class and was asked, the whole class was asked, do you defend Columbus Day or do you want it to change to Indigenous Peoples Day? Oh. And of course, the instruction was heavily on the Indigenous people. The teacher was very much on side of it can only be Indigenous Peoples Day. And my daughter was she was the one student who stood up and said, I'm against that. I'm in favor of Christopher Columbus. And the teacher didn't even throw her a bone by saying, okay, well, these are the arguments on that side. You know, it's I think most of the girls in the class were innocently being persuaded by this teacher who was like, we got to get rid of Columbus. He was an evil man. These are young, sweet girls who they trust in this authority figure. So, but that's what's happening in school after school after school. The only reason Yardley was ready to counter program is because she lives with me. And I'm such a loudmouth on all this stuff, so she gets it through osmosis. But most people don't have the time for that nonsense. All right, wait, I wanna end on this. That debacle of an interview the other night continues to have legs in that even the left is coming out now. And you tell me what you think, Jesse, but I think they're really starting to worry about Kamala Harris. I genuinely think they're starting to worry. So you may have seen the New York Times response to the interview. It was remarkable. So it's by Reed Epstein, and he goes on to say the following. She favors broad strokes over detailed policy papers. The interviews of her have elicited few details. Little about that careful approach changed during the interview with MSNBC's Stephanie Ruhle, who they described as a friendly interviewer who plowed no new ground. She largely avoided direct questions about how she would govern, this is Kamala, and why some voters remain fond of Trump when it comes to the economy. She gave roundabout answers. She responded to fairly basic and predictable questions with roundabout responses that did not provide a substantive answer. She said nothing about why voters think Trump and Republicans would be better on the economy. Ruhle brought up the elephant in the room. How could any of this happen without Democrat control of the Senate, all her grand plans? She skated past the question. And then he says a hard-hitting Harris interview is yet to come, saying Her media strategy has been to sit with friendly inquisitors who are not inclined to ask terribly thorny questions or press her when her responses are evasive. Nothing about that changed in this interview. Went on to say, it's not quite clear what Ms. Harris gained aside from giving her campaign aides the ability to say she did a one-on-one cable interview. Rule openly showed her preference for Harris. What do you make of that, Jesse?
I think the Democrats thought that things were really, really good once they finally got rid of the albatross around their neck, Joe Biden, and they were so excited about what they had lost. They weren't completely aware of what they had gained. A moron who is insecure and doesn't know anything about anything. They were too busy dancing in the streets to get rid of senile Joe to realize they hitched their wagon to somebody without a personality and without an intellect. And we shall see if that person can win the White House. But I don't see it, Megyn. I think we're going to win this November. Everything I hear, stuff like that from the New York Times, her struggles with men, it sounds like a losing campaign to me. I hope I'm right.
They're worried. The New York Times would not have written. They're not trying to hit her. They're trying to help her, saying, study up. You're not doing well. Even they see it. Jesse, great to see you. Find him on YouTube at Jesse Kelly DC. When we come back, a first-time guest here, Rob Schneider. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. The app shows whether you're burning fat or carbs and provides tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workout, sleep, and stress management. You breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and then, based on your measurements, Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for the day. You can also breathe into it before and after workouts and meals to get real-time insights. Your metabolism is your body's engine, how it turns food into fuel. Optimal metabolic health translates to numerous benefits, including easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, and better sleep. Lumen can also track your cycle, adjusting its recommendations to maintain a healthy metabolism through hormonal shifts. If you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me/Megyn to get 15% off your Lumen. That's lumen.me/MEGYN for 15% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. We are closing out the week with something fun and really deep. I'm excited to be joined by actor and comedian Rob Schneider. He has a new book out. It's called You Can Do It. Speak Your Mind, America. It's part memoir, part warning on censorship, and part siren call to action. And it is currently the #1 political humor book on Amazon right now. Let's keep it there. Let's make it go even higher on the entire Amazon book scale. And I can't wait to get into the book. But before we do, here's a quick look back at some of the fun highlights of Rob's very successful movie career.
Philadelphia.
Smart. Good.
Fish?
Yeah.
Pony?
Yes.
Hip? Hip hop? Hip hop anonymous? Damn you! You gave him the easy ones!
Are you comfortable?
Actually, no.
Ooh, I'm sweating. You're getting me all hot. You don't like my hair, do you?
I think there's been a mistake.
Did you say steak?
Aloha. Sorry about your brain. I had an accident too. Believe it or not, this is my good eye.
All the evidence is arranged by case number.
Do you realize we're almost as tall as you?
I'll take 2 banana daiquiris, 1 mango, slow gin fizz, 1 slippery nipple, and for me, a screaming orgasm on the beach with extra sugar on the rim. Yum.
Little
wow.
Walk down memory lane for you there,
My
Rob.
wife has not let my kids see not one of those movies.
Soon.
Yeah.
So it was fascinating boning up on your history and your family story, getting ready for this interview. Did not know at all about the very interesting family background.
Okay.
the Randy grandpa.
Yeah.
Right? And or that you are part Filipino. I didn't know any of this of you.
Yeah, it was an interesting childhood. You know, it's interesting seeing that the Big Daddy clip. Can I just tell a story real quick about that? Adam Sandler wasn't at the he's the highest paid actor in the world now.
Is he?
But this was
Is he number one?
Before the movie. He's the #1, yeah.
Wow, I didn't
Not
know.
that I'm keeping track, 57 million last year. But who cares? I'm not competing with them. He's already won. But at that time, before The Waterboy came out and did 39 million, which nobody had ever done that in a movie in October. They didn't know it was even possible. We were doing this movie, Big Daddy. And he tried to get me hired for this one role, and the studio said no. And then another one, he said, well, you're not right for that. And I said, don't worry about it. And he said, well, there's this one line in this. I said, it's a Chinese guy. He said, just come out and make something of it. Play whoever you want. So, and he said, okay, come out. And so I did, and it was supposed to be just one day. And so I'll get you paid for the day. And he said, just come back tomorrow. And I said, so, and I said, but I don't have any lines. I'm not in the scene. He said, we'll just figure out something. And then the next day, he just the doorbell would ring, go answer the door and come up with some lines. So he just kept putting me in stuff. I said, come back the next day. He kept me paid on a great daily rate. And he put me, and it ended up being one of the biggest roles in the movie. And I was only supposed to be there one day. And he said, come back again tomorrow. So by the second week, somebody's going, why is Rob Schneider in this for 2 weeks? He's only supposed to be there one day. And and so that was his way of just, taking care of me. And
so he's a good guy.
Yeah, he's just incredible. And he's, he did it in a sneaky way, which is like
even better.
Even better, yeah.
So did you guys meet on SNL, or how did you become friends?
I heard about him. There was this thing called Comedy USA, which is like a tiny little comedy news magazine, listen to comedy news. But and on the cover of it was Chris Rock and Adam Sandler. So I knew that those were the two guys in New York, and they were, a little younger than me. And it was me and David Spade on the West Coast, and I got on David Letterman, which was a big deal if you're doing stand-up on David Letterman. I got on first, so they said, well, who's that guy? And so he knew about me, and then he came out, and his first performance when he moved to L.A. was at the Improv, and not the regular Improv at downtown, like literally like a hotel lobby. There was like a bar, and they had 40 seats, and they had like the little comedy club in there, and I went to go see him that night. And the only two people who were laughing hysterically hard was me and Adam laughing at his own joke. And then we went out and had a beer, and I said, you're going to be huge, and I guarantee it.
Did he have the big hair at the time?
Yeah, and and then I got on Saturday Night Live with David Spade, and then he got on 6 months later with Chris.
Did he start writing? I didn't realize you started as a writer.
He was a writer. That's how they suck you into the system. They get you in, and you go like, how do we get on here somehow? And they said, well, if you could write something better that you can do than other people. And it's good because they got to get young people who are willing to work 100-hour weeks, and there's only people in your 20s can do it.
So what years was that, and who were the big stars then?
89-90 season. The monsters on SNL at the time was Dana Carvey, Mike Myers, Phil Hartman,
amazing,
Dennis Miller. I mean, these were giants.
You were there during the Chris Farley years?
Yeah,
then?
Chris Farley was hired. I remember there was this very annoying person at the hotel at the Omni Berkshire next to me when I was getting my key, and the guy next to me, and I didn't know what he looked like, but I knew there was a guy, Chris Farley, being hired. But so I didn't. And so I heard this guy next to me going, I need a smoking room because I like to smoke. And I don't want to have to pay the bill later for cleaning, blah, blah, blah. So I need the smoking room. You got to check up your little roller-dinger thing, and you'll see the name there. And go, who's this a-hole? And he said, the name's Farley, Chris Farley. And I said, hi, Chris, I'm Rob. I'm on the show. I'll be working with you. And I said, let's go out and have dinner and talk. And I can tell you because I was there. I was such a veteran. I'd been there like 4 shows before that, so suddenly I acted like I knew something. And we went out to dinner to a place called Joe's. It was a Mexican restaurant, 53rd and 7th. And it closed shortly after that evening that Chris Farley and I ate there. I don't know if the reason was he was standing on the table after 9 shots of tequila and 9 beers, naked on the table dancing. And he wasn't he was hysterical, but he wasn't a famous, rich, fat guy naked dancing on the table. He was just a fat guy.
Yeah, not yet.
Nobody knew who he was, and but he was still hilarious. And that was the thing about Chris was even in his outrageous behavior, it was still likable.
Yeah,
he was borderline.
Yeah, right.
And over the border, especially for that poor, unfortunate Mexican restaurant. But yeah, he was a A tornado.
You know, I'll never forget, I lived in Chicago during that time, and I saw him in Chicago at a movie theater. I was going to some, I don't even remember what I was going to see. He'd already made Tommy Boy because I saw him and I told him that I loved it.
Yeah.
But I was going up the escalator to go to the movies, or I was going down and he was going up, whatever. And he was all by himself. And we actually wound up seeing him again a little later, and he walked into the theater by himself. And I just thought, that's sad. You know, like there's something sad about it.
I swear, that was the saddest part about me, was that he died alone. And don't get me started. I'm still so brokenhearted over it. He was such a lovely guy. And you have to have people, when you're that open, you have to have people who love you, to be around you, to protect you. And, you know, and that was the sad thing about Chris, because he had so much to do. And I'm not sure if this is an urban myth, but there was a great script about Fatty Arbuckle that he would have been perfect to play, because Fatty Arbuckle was a guy who had his career ruined. He's more popular than Charlie Chaplin in the silent film era, and he was a big man, a big funny comedian. And there was a party in San Francisco where a girl died, and the yellow journalism of Randolph Hearst at the time destroyed him, and the local DA went after him. And he had nothing to do with it, it turned out. And then the first trial, he was innocent, and then they went after him again. And by this time, the second trial, you know, they never correct in the news later. Right. It was innocent. Never. It's just the salacious stuff that goes out there. You know what they try to do to Trump, just all the salacious stuff. Yeah. And they hope that enough of that sticks, so that, and he never worked again, Fatty Arbuckle. And as a matter of fact, the great comedian Buster Keaton said to him, "You should change your name to Will Be Good." And so
see if that gives you any good press. That would have been good for Farley. I mean, he obviously had so many struggles. But you mentioned the Trump thing. You know, just today, that ridiculous Letitia James verdict against him, trying to bankrupt his business for, you know, now it's climbed with interest to over $500 million. He did absolutely nothing wrong. No banks complained, all that stuff. It's on appeal today. Okay. And in New York's appellate court, it'll eventually wind up at the higher court, but it's in the interim one now. They're giving Tish James's side a very hard time. Oh, good. This is a very left-wing court about this nonsense case and this nonsense verdict. But when this thing gets reversed, whether it's by this court or a higher court, it's not going to get anywhere near the coverage that
it won't.
That they found that the civil verdict did.
Isn't it heartening? And because we have to focus on the positive, we have to be thinking about reconciliation. We have to work together. And it is heartening that in an extremely liberal place, people they're being rational about this decision. And I'm saying that moving forward, and I was in Washington, D.C., and I love our country, and I know you do too, and we want to work together at this. And we have to do some things to prevent this polarization and this lawfare. And one of the things, I forget the congressman's name, but I was in his office, and the proposal is a really good, and it'll be bipartisan legislation, if this lawfare, to end all this lawfare at the state level, if any state, any federal elected official, past or present, and anybody, whether it's a vice president, a president, or any senator, congressman, any lawfare that could be initiated against him at the state level would automatically, if this legislation gets pushed through, with hopefully in the Trump administration, it automatically goes to the federal. Mm-hmm. And so it's taken out. And then so it's not erased, but at least the potentiality for its, the polarizing,
the incentive for the DA who wants to make his name on getting a big
politician. And who ran saying, I'm going to go after him.
Yeah.
I mean, so you just see something that's out of, like New York City turning into Louisiana of the 1920s. Was something I didn't see when I was living in New York in the 1990s. That was something that would be coming.
I know.
That was something that would be possible.
Did you see, you saw the indictment of the mayor yesterday?
I did. Isn't that interesting?
Well, I'm trying to figure out what I think about it, to be honest with you.
Me too. Here's what I'm thinking. A year ago, he was one of the Democrats, because the only thing that this illiberal, because it's not liberal, it's the illiberal intelligentsia hates more than conservatives, And I don't believe there's such things as conservatives anymore. It's just people who aren't crazy liberals.
Right. I totally relate to that.
And once we can get over that, because, we don't get, pushed into that basket of deplorables. And you realize what he did a year ago is he said a simple thing. As a mayor of America's, one of the great cities of the world, we cannot afford to have he's spending more money on these influx of 10,000 immigrants a month and spending more money on them than we're spending on our police, $5 billion. And when you tell the truth in that illiberal intelligentsia, you are going to get attacked. And believe me, this, taking foreign money, I mean, that doesn't sound that too different from what the president's son did.
I was going to say, this same DOJ run by different people, but had zero interest when Hunter Biden did this, when Joe Biden did this. Not to mention, you think Bill de Blasio is squeaky clean? Remember his wife absconded or was accused of absconding. It was like hundreds of millions of dollars just disappeared under her reign, and she wasn't even the mayor. I'm just saying, like, if you... it feels a little like show me the man and I'll show you the crime.
When you expose some of the, it's crazy to have. I mean, when no one's voting in Springfield, Ohio, to fly in 30,000 Haitians into their town, and they're just doing it without asking you, and then you're complaining later, and then you're racist. So I think that if you are the mayor of the biggest city in America, and you cry foul to something that's the federal policy, that is basically like calling the FBI SWAT team on you to come at 3 o'clock in the morning to your house. Because that's what they did. There's an interesting picture I tweeted where it literally is a couple having a Thanksgiving dinner inside. It looks like a Rockefeller. Well, it's not Rockefeller, but Rockwell painting.
Rockwell, yep.
And then you see an FBI SWAT guy out in front with a gun out from the window, about to jump in. And I go, the fact that people can recognize that is something that you could mock now is because it's happening. It's because you really feel like this administration, that's why it's so important to kick them out this time. This administration has pushed things so far and has politicized our governmental agencies and has ideologically captured them to a place where it is deserving of ridicule and it is deserving of mocking and where it's dangerous. And that's why I think it's important, and that's why I wrote the book. It's about you need to speak your mind, and we need to speak freely, and let us agree to disagree. But let's not shout each other down, but let's have a real discourse. Shouting down is the worst form of debate. But let us have a discourse, and you don't get smooth from smooth, you get it from friction. But if you've got ideas, if the Democrats have ideas and the Republicans have ideas, let's do them. But when it has been proved that this administration, the Biden-Harris administration, worked with tech companies to censor Americans who turned out to be right, and which is a blatant violation of our First Amendment. And our First Amendment, our founding fathers, they could have put guns first, but they said, it's an even better tool to defend against tyranny, free speech. So when this has been proven that's been violated, and of course the Justice Department, it's another captured department of this administration, doesn't do anything about it, it really sends a message out there that there are two Americas. And we're only going to go after you if you're on the other side. I don't think that is not a house that will stand.
Want to remind the audience, it's called You Can Do It by Rob Schneider. Speak your mind, America. You have paid a price for speaking your mind. I watch you and look at your story and think it's so familiar to me because many of us who were canceled over bullshit get radicalized on the issue of free speech and what's being done to our country.
What they did to you when you were just, it was something else to see because you were coming at it from a place of reason and you were coming at it from a place of compassion and a place of understanding.
Right.
And when you do that, but once you cross over the line, once people know that this is somebody that is on the fence. And we can't have people, the Democrats won't have people on the fence. You got to be all in, including, including that boys can be girls and girls can be boys and that there's 100 genders. And if I had a dime for every gender, I'd have 20 cents. But if you don't go along with that, then, and if you allow any opening that they'll just take you down. And that's exactly what happened to you.
Yeah.
And we're just watching it going, how did this happen?
Right. Well, I mean, people with an agenda. And I do think they get particularly exercised by people who they thought were at least possibly on their side or gettable to their side.
Yeah.
You know, when you have Sean Hannity say half the stuff that I say, it's not controversial. But if I said it back then, at least, it had to be blown up because it was a betrayal, right? It was like a telegraphing of she's not with us.
It's more than that. It was a warning to others.
Yeah.
If you don't go with us and you don't toe the line, if you're going to be a troublemaker, we're going to come after you. And that's the same thing with Kendi Jackson, the Supreme Court Justice. When she says, when they ask her, can you tell us your in her Senate confirmation hearing for the Supreme Court, there's only 9 who decide what our society, basically, how we live our lives, these 9 justices. And they asked her, can you tell us what your definition of a woman is? And she said, she acted like that was a bizarre question.
Right.
And she said, I'm not a biologist.
Right.
What she's doing in that is signaling to to the liberal elites, I'm not going to be a problem for you. I'm going to go along with whatever it is you say. And that signals a message out to others to like, you better toe the line or we're going to come after you. And that's really what that is. And as much as it was a buckshot to the community, get in line.
Yeah.
And that's what they did to you.
It had some negative consequences for their side too, because
it did, because you're a strong person who didn't just lay down and take it.
That's true too, but I didn't mean that. I meant that when that whole thing happened to me, I went out there and I didn't know. It was like, oh my God, everything was crazy. And I apologized because that's what I was told to do. And I was genuinely led to believe, even by people I cared about at the time, not like Doug, but like some friends, that I had crossed some imaginary tripwire I didn't know existed. So I was like, I better go out there and apologize. And I did. And as my friend Melissa Francis said to me later, she goes, you ruined apologizing. You killed apologizing because there's not a conservative since me who apologized, because I think it just gave up the game because I apologized and yet still they tried to ruin my career. They canceled my show.
Because it isn't about
that's not the way forward.
Apologizing
people
was
realize
just part of the destruction.
Yes, the humiliation.
Well, if you think about it, and what I've learned thanks to my friend James Lindsay and a basic knowledge of history was that Chairman Mao didn't just have one revolution in China. He had 2. The first one, 1949, kicking out Chiang Kai-shek, but the second one was more consequential because it was the Cultural Revolution. It was to unburden us
from what has been.
And what the 4 olds that he wanted to get rid of was culture, customs, habits, and ideas. He wanted to throw away all tradition to start over. And that's what you kind of see now. And so part of that was the shaming, and it is very cultural. It is Maoist. What they did to you was to shame you, and there is no retribution. There is no, and that's the thing about that. Turned me away from the Democrats in 2013. Was there, once you get canceled, there's no way for reconciliation. There's no path to forgiveness in the illiberal. The illiberal intelligentsia. It's just you're out and you're out forever. It's like Elon Musk, you're out. Even though that's as liberal as a guy as you get.
Yep.
Joe Rogan, that's as liberal as a guy as you get. The Dave Chappelle, if you don't go along, if you question it, you're out. And that's Mao Zedong. That is a cultural revolution. And we need to wake up to this because, as the Bible says, we will know them by their deeds. And Jesus says, we'll know them by their deeds. And these are Marxist deeds. This is communism. And when did we be okay with communism? And I thought that was automatically disqualification for higher office.
Day and age. But I have a question for you on this. This is perfect for you. Because I'm seeing this week that there is an attempted comeback by somebody who did not cross one of those fateful lines of the misstepping on their sacred cows of gender or race or sexuality.
Yeah.
But she was said to be a nasty biatch, and that's Ellen DeGeneres.
Yeah.
So her show got canceled after she had this testy exchange with Dakota Johnson, where something happened where Dakota said, oh, I had this birthday party. And Ellen said, well, why didn't you invite me? You didn't invite me. And she said, like, no, I did invite you, Ellen. That's not what happened. And Ellen had blown her off and then tried to play the victim on the set with her. Anyway, it led to article after article of people being like, Ellen's a bitch. Ellen is a nasty person. And all these staffers started to come out, not for nothing, but I know a guy, I know him very well, whose sister worked for her, who said, you were not allowed to make eye contact with Ellen in the halls of that show. If you saw her, this is not a nice person. So she eventually got canceled, but now she's coming back. She's got a Netflix special. That's the right response.
Yeah.
She's got a Netflix special. And here's the capper. On the promo, and apparently there's now articles out about from people who have seen the preview, she plays the victim. And she says, poor me. And she actually has the nerve to say that she was run out of Hollywood. This person...
With $100 million in her pocket.
$450 million, according to Forbes. That's a low estimate.
Yeah.
Because, so now she's out there saying, I was run out of Hollywood. She's actually reportedly complaining about how hard it is for women in America with the double standards.
Look at Oprah, how hard it is for her.
Oh, she's got, like 10 houses, Ellen DeGeneres?
Michelle Obama, look how hard it is for women in America. They're hurting.
They're going to let her back in, Rob, because she's a lesbian, she's a leftist, and she didn't hit one of their sacred cows. Nastiness, that's their bread and butter.
Well, I think everyone... I mean, I will say, like, the resentment, I think everyone should have a chance for reconciliation. I don't think Jesus exempted anybody. And so I do, while it does, because I have been allowed back in, but I don't hold any grievance and resentment. It's very important. And I would just say for Ellen, the resentment, you have to know, you have to get over resentment to whatever addiction or addictive qualities happen. To get over it, you have to deal with resentment and address it, and then otherwise you're going to fall back into the same pattern. And I think also to admit your mistakes.
Of all people on earth to be feeling sorry for herself, Ellen DeGeneres should not be on the list.
She should at least, but make a real apology and do it.
There's no apology. It's just woe is me. I was run out of Hollywood as she speaks from this grandiose stage on Netflix. Hello, you haven't been canceled if you are doing a Netflix special. She got $20 million for the one before this. I'm sure she's fine.
I'm sure she's fine. It is, Ellen is a comedian and all comedians, and I get it, and I have to fight this, and it is true. You never forget that even though she has $450 million, I really do, and I mean this sincerely, the fact that she had to hold back that she was a lesbian for years, and ABC told me you couldn't come out. I mean, that frustration would create an anger and a resentment that I think is understandable for people. That doesn't equate or doesn't justify any meanness or any ugliness. But I was with her, and when she was a stand-up comedian, and when they made her star in a movie where she had to kiss another guy and do this movie, which obviously wasn't being able to play herself. And I do remember being with her and feeling that resentment and going, wow, that's a much tougher road than I've had to go through. Mm-hmm. And so
But I know, the same society bestowed riches beyond the wildest imagination upon this woman.
But when you don't get over your grievances and you let it fester and resent and take it out on people, and then I think that's something that has to be, I mean, there really does have to be a coming to Jesus moment where you have to, I mean, literally or figuratively, where you can just get over this stuff and then start over and say, yeah, I was whether you want to use the C word or the B word, and admit that and move on. And I think in our culture, the great thing about America is that you really do have a tradition of forgiveness here. Mm-hmm. We have a culture.
I agree with you. And forgiveness is great. I'm Catholic. It's just the double standard on it is very galling. Here's a clip, by the way. This is the promo for her Netflix special. And here's a clip.
Decided to take up gardening. I got chickens. Let me see what else I can tell you about that's been going on. Oh, yeah, I got kicked out of show business. Be kind girl wasn't kind. That was the headline. Here's the problem. I'm a comedian who got a talk show, and I ended the show every day by saying, be kind to one another. Had I ended my show by saying, go fuck yourselves, people would have been pleasantly surprised to find out I'm kind.
Well, yeah, that's disingenuous. That's disingenuous.
Yeah, disingenuous.
Disgenerous. That's disgenerous. Well, I think you should, I mean, there's certainly no lack of, I don't sense any humility in that.
No, and no one cares that now she's dealing with chickens. It's like, all right,
You're a normal $450 million person.
And by the way, I guarantee you she's
Who's
worth
taking
a
care
lot
of her
more.
chickens? I guarantee, what's that? You guarantee what?
She's worth a lot more than $450 million.
Her art alone.
And like those talk show hosts.
Her devil-worshipping art alone.
It's just, it's too much. I can't stand these rich celebrities who want us to feel sorry for them. We don't, right? It's like all those you saw, like Julia Roberts on the Oprah special with Kamala Harris, like, oh, and Meryl Streep. Like,
I know, winning over the hearts of people who live in gated communities everywhere.
Well, wait, are these still your people? Are you still in California?
No, I had to move out of California because I got little kids. And
we understand why.
It's dangerous to, in California, take your kids, in public schools. In the morning you drop off a girl, in the afternoon you pick up a boy. You never know what you're going to get. But I really didn't feel it was safe in California. And I felt, it's very interesting because I'm getting those calls, and I'm sure you are too, where people call you and say, I wish I could come out and say what I believe, I agree with you. I just can't. And my favorite was my lawyer who called me, my entertainment lawyer. And I want to sell him out and say his name now, but I'm not going to. Eric, I'll say his first name.
Okay, good.
And he said, I thought you were nuts 5 years ago. But now that my kid's in first grade, and I can't believe what they're doing to him in the school. And it's a private school. So I can just imagine what's happening to public school. And I would say to all those rich liberals out there in Los Angeles, if you're lucky enough to send your kid to private schools, most people are being educated in public schools. And the garbage and the indoctrination that's happening to those kids is going to affect society. And that's how
inescapable.
And that's how the the Maoist revolution didn't die. It went underground because in the 1960s, Marcuse was one of the heads of it, was realizing that the revolution wasn't going to happen with the worker because the worker realized, the revolutionaries realized that the workers knew that capitalism worked. It improved their lives and the lives of their children. And so the revolution wasn't going to come through the worker. So they were going to have to do what? They were going to have to infiltrate education. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what they did, starting in the late 1960s and the 70s in university levels. One of them was Kamala Harris's dad.
Yeah,
who was
an avowed Marxist.
An avowed Marxist teaching Marxism at Stanford. And that was when it was ideologically cute. Well, let's include this. But what really was happening, it was this indoctrination was spreading out to where by 1990, it was getting into K through 12. And then by 2010, it's 20-year marks, basically. By 2010, the capture had been complete. So that agenda is out there. And so you really have an indoctrination that is really trying to, what if you had to say, well, what are they doing, really? They want to create such confusion and such a disharmony and anger and fighting. It doesn't matter what. If they want to argue about gender, which bathroom, allowing kids to in sports, boys into girls' locker rooms, or whether it's race and judging people by the color of their skin. If you're white, you're automatically racist, or sexuality and this the trans issues. It is to create so much chaos that people are willing to trade off their liberties, their freedoms for a sense of calm. Mm-hmm. And I think it's the same thing with bringing in 30,000 Haitians into Ohio. It's like, enough, we give. What do we have to do to get some calm here? Mm-hmm. And at a certain point, if you love your country, you have to stand up and say, enough of this. And the only way to get, since we're only allowed to have two parties, the only way to have a normal Democratic Party is to kick them out. And so they could lose 3 times in a row, like 2 Reagan administrations and then 1 Bush, so that you end up with what? A centrist Clinton administration again. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the only way forward for...
But why is it so tight then? What if the electorate's starting to get that?
I don't believe that it's that tight. I think you have 95% of the, well, obviously all the tech companies outside of Twitter. Thank you, Elon Musk. Pray for him.
Same.
Is, ideologically captured by the left. And, all the newspapers, they're, you used to have people, as Glenn Greenwald said, in the 1970s, you had hardworking middle-class people who wanted to go into journalism because they wanted to make the world a better place. Now you have these rich kids going into media and blogging because they have a grievance. So why is it so close? I think that I think fear works for the Democrats. It really does. I think you can scare people and you can continue to lie and say that in Charlottesville, Trump said there are good people on both sides, including Nazis, even though...
That was repeated by the New York Times this past week.
It's just, well, if you
doesn't matter how many times it's been debunked.
Well, I mean, it's really out of the National Socialist Joseph Goebbels playbook. If you just keep lying enough, and they'll believe it, and that's what's interesting. If you have to look back at this historically, and the Nazis, they knew propaganda. The totality of the propaganda was very critical for them to succeed, to take away all the rights from the citizens of Germany starting in 1934. And what they realized was that, we can have the newsreels, we could have the radio, but people don't, and we can have the newspapers, but people don't have to read the newspapers. They don't have to go to the movie, so see the newsreels. They don't have to turn on the radio. So, but here's one thing they can't avoid: the citizenry, billboards, and that's why they were ubiquitous in Nazi Germany, because they just covered you and showered you with this. So it's the same mouthpiece that is being used for the liberal intelligentsia now. It's just buckshot. Just shoot enough of it and see what sticks, and see what can get people's fear, because they don't have ideas. The Democratic National Convention didn't run on ideas. They're not for anything. It's what they're against. They're against any limits on abortion, and they're against...
That's another big motivator.
And they're against anything to do with Donald Trump, and they're hoping, against all hope, that Americans will hate Donald J. Trump more than they love their country. And that's their whole
All right, I got to
plan.
take a brief break, but when we come back, I want to talk about, it's very obvious you would not be allowed to remain in Hollywood with these opinions. It's very clear to my entire audience why
Small
you got
price
kicked
to
out.
pay.
But we'll get into it. But again, it's called You Can Do It by Rob Schneider. Speak Your Mind, America. You can do it. More on that and Rob's life right after this. As the cool fall breeze settles in, there is nothing better than wrapping yourself in pure comfort. Cozy Earth is all about turning your home into a sanctuary of softness and tranquility. There's the bamboo sheet set made from premium viscose from bamboo. These sheets are unbelievably soft and get even softer with every wash. You will love how breathable and temperature regulating they are. But it's not just the sheets. Cozy Earth's women's stretch knit bamboo pajama set is another must-have. And for the guys, check out the new men's performance sleep short. Designed for comfort and breathability, they will keep you cool and cozy all night long. And don't forget the new puffy sheep slippers. That's fun. Cozy Earth products are crafted with a commitment to quality that you can feel, backed by a 10-year warranty. Treat yourself this fall. Go to cozyearth.com/MEGYN and use the code Megyn for up to 40% off. That's cozyearth.com/Megyn. And don't forget to tell them I sent you in the post-purchase survey. Cozy Earth, wrap yourself in luxury this fall. Do you owe back taxes? Are your tax returns still unfiled? Did you forget to file for an extension? The October 15th deadline is fast approaching and time is running out. If you have not gathered all of your documents or made any estimated payments, you could soon be targeted by the IRS. After October 15th, the IRS can garnish your wages, freeze your bank accounts, or even seize your property. Oh, joy. But there's help. Don't panic. Tax Network USA, a nationwide tax firm, has helped taxpayers save more than $1 billion in tax debt. They have filed over 10,000 tax returns and assisted thousands in reducing their tax burdens, and they can help you too. Don't wait. Visit tnusa.com/Megyn or call 1-800-958-1000 for a free consultation. They will guide you through a few simple questions to determine how much you can save. Take action now before it's too late. Visit tnusa.com/Megyn or call 1-800-958-1000. 1000. So you got canceled, I guess, because you were questioning certain vaccines. They didn't like that. That was long before it was hip to question vaccines.
Yeah, well, God forbid, my body, my choice.
Was that the thing that did it?
That started it. Well, Hollywood doesn't want any controversy at all because they don't act like you and me, like what will be the best show? How can I do this? Or what would be the best idea that I could put forward? Or what do I put my name on? Hollywood executives and streaming services now, which have taken over Hollywood, normal Hollywood, in those movies days, they still act the same. It's not what's the best movie, what's the most enlightening thing, or what can I be proud of and my grandkids could see one day. It isn't that at all. It's what will delay my inevitable firing the longest. And that is not be controversial, not hire people like me, people who speak their mind. And that's okay. I mean, I get it. It's fear-based. And other actors, I mean, I had an Academy Award-winning son of an actor who called me, and he said, I wish I could speak up like you can. I agree with what you said. And I told him, I said, don't.
Oh, no.
I said, don't go on Facebook or speak your mind, but be judicious because it will cost you.
Yeah.
I mean, luckily, I could write a book and I could still perform stand-up comedy and people support me. And most of the shows, literally everyone last year was sold out and people support me and they believe in free speech and they love this country deeply like I do and you do. But I told him, I said, be judicious. Don't talk to the streaming service guy who's, the executive. Don't talk to the director or the producer, but talk to the boom guy. Tell him how you feel. Mm-hmm. Talk to your driver. Talk to the makeup person and have conversations in your family. But be careful because, if you put on Facebook, men can't have babies even though they can't. They'll cancel your Facebook account. You get canceled. So don't allow yourself to be easily wiped out. We need soldiers. And so be judicious about it.
It's so sad. Imagine being on the other side and being able to say whatever you want and still be able to work.
I know. Imagine being like we're saying during the break, like Madonna. I often thought about blowing up the White House.
No problem.
Yeah, no visit from the...
Not controversial.
No Secret Service the next day. Excuse me, Madonna, Sevilla Laga, whatever her last name is. Cerritos, we got to ask you some questions about saying about blowing up the White House. Where were you on the night of,
Right.
So if I would have said during the Obama administration, I've often thought about blowing up the White House. Believe me,
yes.
You would have had a SWAT team at 3 a.m, kicking down the door,
you would never work again. Never work again.
If can you imagine if I would have said what Johnny Depp said, and the one was they're the last actor that assassinated the president. Nobody comes to his house. Imagine if I would have said that during the Obama administration.
Look at what Robert De Niro is saying about Trump every week.
I will say to the people shouting him down like, your movies suck. That's not true.
No, his movies are very good.
Suck. He's one of the greatest actors. He's the heir apparent to Brando, blah, blah, blah. But he's a loon.
Yeah.
You have to just say what he is. He's, he has, basically, I describe this to people. You know what's happening now because people are aware about concussions and the problems with CTE. When you get hit and you get a dinger in football, they put you in the blue tent, and the sideline.
Yeah.
That's what needs to happen to Democrats. They need to go in the blue tent for a little bit, kind of, get your eyes checked and then come out and be rational again.
Yeah, cool off
and
a
De
little.
Niro needs to go in the blue tent. Because it's not calming things down. We need to be rational. Donald J. Trump was loved by all these New Yorkers, by Oprah. I was with him 10 years ago at the anniversary of Saturday Night Live. He was there. Alec Baldwin was there. We're all in the same elevator together. Mm-hmm. Melania, we're on. No, everybody's gonna be getting along. It's just this kind of red line, and it is just a whipping up indoctrination that is it's an ugliness, and I think we really need to clamp down on it. And
let me ask you a question about that.
Yeah,
I recently taped something with PBS. They're doing a special, and I went in. We talked a lot about J.D. Vance. But then they asked me this question toward the end of the interview, and I don't think it's aired yet, but they were saying something to the effect of, are we going to be okay, no matter who wins, Trump or Kamala?
That's a good question.
Right. And I tend to be a generally positive person, and I answered it with, yes, we're going to be okay. But
with some reservation.
I got to tell you, Rob, ever since I taped it, I've been like, Did I say the right thing?
No, you did say the right thing, but I think that's a very complicated question, and I've thought about that too, because I think it's important that we answer that, because we also on the right are also susceptible to fear. And I say right, and I just mean in the not crazy liberal
No,
point
I
of
agree.
view.
Same. Because you're a registered independent, right? So am I.
Yeah, no, I'm a registered Republican now.
You are? You crossed over.
I had to. I had to support Donald Trump, and I have to support Robert Kennedy, who supports Donald Trump, and Tulsi Gabbard, all these former liberals like myself, former Democrats, I should say, now supporting Trump. We have to know that there are some things, like if she does win, if Harris does win, and you have to know that this is no longer a Democratic Party. They don't care about democracy, because in 2016, Bernie Sanders would have been the nominee, but they were not going to allow that. They were going to give you the pretense. They're going to make you think that you have a choice in the Democratic Party, in the primary, that you can vote for somebody. But they don't mean it, because they pushed him aside, superdelegates, and they put in Hillary. 4 years later, and Macron learned from the Democrats here that you just have everybody drop out, and then you can keep power. You can manipulate the system.
If you can help them cheat at a presidential debate, that really helps too. Thanks, Donna Brazil.
Yeah, and then they just made, they just said, this is your choice, Democratic voters. And then in 2024, they do it again. They just anoint her. And we don't know who's really running the country.
No, we have no idea.
They don't want you to know. They don't want you to know. So what is the reality? The reality is, at a certain point, is America, as the greatest experiment in freedom, going to be a blip in the history of the world? In other words, we've had 108 billion people, and I talk about this in the book, 108 billion people that have been alive in the history of the world. Of those people, a very few of those in the millions have had the opportunity to live under freedom with unfettered free speech, which allows... and free speech is all speech. It's the ugly stuff. It's the stuff that you hate. It's the stuff that you loathe. You either for all of it or none of it. And that friction is what creates innovation. It creates creativity. It creates the possibility to move things forward. And it creates that possibility, because you have chaos. Absolute chaos is with no rules doesn't work. And absolute control doesn't work, because that's tyranny. You have to have that balance. And what gives you that balance is free speech. Now, is this going to be something that's toppled and that ends up being in the human history that just to be a blip, that basically from the late 18th century through the beginning of the 21st century, and then it's over.
Oh, gosh.
And that is a possibility, and it hurts. But I think that for our kids, it's important to do everything we can to keep this beautiful gift that we've been given. And I would just say, like, the consequences.
Well, let me just ask you, why does that affect you so deeply?
Well, my mother, who just passed away a couple of years ago, she also got COVID and survived, but she loved this country. And I remember her being so, she was a Democrat who never voted for Democrats. And I remember going, why wouldn't you vote for Jimmy Carter? And I'm never voting with a Democrat, you don't understand. And I remember, and she knew what hardship was. I mean, her family, her sisters found money that the Japanese buried in a cave, and she found these other metal pineapples she thought were valuable, and she brought them to her brother-in-law, Oscar Hamada, Japanese Filipino, and he's one of the reasons they survived. He started burying food before, when the Japanese, he knew they were going to come.
They got attacked.
And they came 9 hours after December 7th, the war, and the day that will live in infamy. 9 hours later.
I didn't know that till I read your book.
Yeah, literally 8 or 9 hours later, the Japanese invaded the Philippines. And so my mother knew, and she like, when she went to school, that dirty money, when the other kids knew who had dirty money. And like who went to school, because you don't get free education in the Philippines. You pay for it. And so I grew up with that. And I was always challenging my mother about that. And I've come around to her her point of view about that. She said, you better fight for this country. Anybody who doesn't love this country can get out.
Yes,
and
on.
I remember saying that in the 70s. So what are you talking about? We got to get everybody to come in. And it's really important because you see what happens in this country. You see what happens in countries where they're letting in people who hate their country. You can see it in England.
Yes.
They hate England. They are not assimilating. And so we need immigration in this country. And God bless the workers who want to come here legally. And God bless the Mexican workers who want to come in and do the work that other people don't want to do, and they work hard. And God bless them, the legal, hardworking people who come in this country. However, if you come in this country, you don't love this country, you don't want to assimilate, then you can't come in this country and you should get kicked out. And they didn't do that in England. And now you have this whole replacement theory. It's a fact in Brussels.
Yeah, we don't. Who cares what they call it? I'm sick of their bullshit labels to try to shut down our objections to their policies.
So, as far as going back to your very valid question that they asked you, and I'm amazed in PBS, which does great work, a lot of it, but their ideology,
Frontline in particular, can be good.
Unbelievable, and they've done great work over the years, and we should keep funding them. But we need to kick out the ideological ones who are ruining it. But the question is, can we survive this, or will we be okay? I would say there's a couple of tipping points that we won't be okay. If we get rid of the filibuster, that will be a turning point. And then if we stack the Supreme Court and have 27 judges, then we'll be like Venezuela, or we'll be like some banana republic. Those are there is, when you have corrupt agencies, like when you have the FBI that seems to be captured, then Justice Department that also seems to be ideologically captured, and then you have the FDA and the CDC, and you have that is captured, and now you have the Federal Communication Commission allowing at the late stage of election, a presidential election, a very crucial presidential election, allowing George Soros to quickly buy 200 radio stations. We're going to say
we're worried.
We're tilting. Going back to what we're saying, I don't think the Democrats have a chance of winning the executive and, the House of Representatives and the Senate. I don't think that's in the cards. But I think that let's go worst case scenario, and they do. Mm-hmm. Let's go. It's not going to be the end of our republic. It's going to be 2 years of again hellish. Democrats trying to, all they care about is keeping power. So they're going to do everything they can. They're going to flood in people again to try to make sure that those, there's only a few battleground states left. Yep. I mean, basically 7 states now are going to decide our election. They're going to continue to try to turn other states. I mean, Washington, when I grew up, the state of Washington was conservative. California used to have, every once in a while, we'd have a Democrat, we'd have a Republican, we'd have a Republican administrator at the executive level, a governor.
Virginia used to be deep red.
Yeah. So what they want to do is have every state like California. Basically, we're going to have these voters and they're going to do whatever we say because we give them enough free stuff. That's not the plan. That is the stated plan. That is what they're doing. In 2021, they passed legislation to get money to fly people in.
Yep.
So that was like, they knew what's happening. So they will do as much damage as they can for 2 years until they lose Congress again, and then we'll be able to have a stopgap. If we do take the Senate, we'll be able to stop a lot of the bad plans. So it's not the end of democracy. It's not the end of our republic. But we're going to have to decide what kind of country do we want. And I think that I don't think it's as close as people are saying. I think we have to, we have to be like Bolivia and have same day. I mean, how come Bolivia and Nigeria, the two not necessarily the most advanced nations in the world and consequential economies like we have, how the world revolves. I mean, what they say in Australia, if the United States gets a cold, we sneeze. Mm-hmm. So the world really depends on a free, robust, economically sound America. And we will survive it. I just think we have to be careful. It's going to get rockier. But I don't think it's going to be that close. I just think we have to get to a point like Vivek Ramaswamy says. I was calling him pastrami for a long time. But
he probably doesn't mind.
To say that we really need to have, we need a voter registration. You got to have an ID, and that's not racist.
Right. Well, that's the problem is when you view the guy as actual Hitler, what are you willing to do to stop him? And this is one of the reasons why many people do not have faith in the vote being fair and the changing of the laws to allow so many mail-in ballots, even post-dated after the election in Pennsylvania. People don't understand the fairness of that or trust in the integrity of it.
And that's what they want us to do. They want us to get fatigued.
And the only states that have made reforms since last time are red states.
Right.
Right? So all the swing states are still just as potentially corruptible as they were before.
Believe me, if immigrants started voting Republican right away, they would stop. They would close that border.
Oh, my gosh.
They would be over. If Haitians for Trump if they see Haitians in Springfield, Ohio, and they start wearing Trump T-shirts, believe me, those planes are going to be deplaned, and they're going to start flying them out of there.
Yes.
Because it really is. And once you see corruption at the highest level, and you realize that, we are teetering. We can only continue to spend this money and keep printing money. And the only reason we're allowed to have these forever wars. And I would just tell people who are on the fence, if you are against censorship, if you are against inflation, if you are against families, children, the next generation being able to afford a home, if you're against these forever wars, then you're going to have to kick these people out. And if anyone's talking about stopping the war in Ukraine, and Napoleon couldn't beat Russia. Mm-hmm. Hitler couldn't beat. This comedian from Zelensky dancing on YouTube videos, he's going to beat Russia. We have to stop the money spend, and we have to stop the slaughter. Mm. People are going to school. You're going about your business. You're able to consider what you want to do today and picking up your kids. There are people who are traumatized, and you have perhaps 1 million dead already. Enough with the slaughter, enough with U.S. paid money, and at least when all this stuff's coming out.
Not to mention the possibility of starting World War III.
Yes, you have Russia pushed, and now this Blinken moron was saying you could fire missiles deep into Russia. Mm-hmm. We're at this point with the greatest, the people have the greatest number of nuclear weapons. Russia, they have small nuclear weapons too.
Rob, think about, if you really want to scare the hell out of yourself, think about Kamala Harris as commander-in-chief in the Situation Room when nukes are being fired inside Russia with American backing. And then we see the possible retaliation, and she's got to make the call. That is the kind of stuff that will keep you awake at night.
We will. And let me just tell you historical precedent. The historical precedent was in the Eisenhower administration, all the Joint Chiefs of Staff, then the military, these people approved and presented Eisenhower with a plan to take out the Soviet Union with 200 nuclear bombs to just wipe them out. And they presented that to Eisenhower. And all of these evil warmongers being so completely clueless, not realizing that 36 hours after that bombing, even if it was successful and there was no bombings back, that nuclear cloud would be over Nebraska. Mm-hmm. And so we have to realize there are some tipping points where you can't recover from. And nuclear war is certainly the biggest one. And we are closer now than we were since, Robert Kennedy's uncle, John F. Kennedy, and Robert Kennedy calmed the world down from nuclear abyss from 1962. And we're at that stage. And that's why it's important to kick these people out and to put your hatred for the tweets of Donald Trump away and realize that he's going to have better people around him. I know Donald Trump, I don't know him well, but I know that he wasn't happy with all the people that he was around last time.
Yeah, he's spoken to that recently.
And he's going to have better people.
Kind of swampified by people who are brought to me by establishment Republicans and people I kind of trusted because they were on the right. And I was misled on a lot of key people.
So was JFK.
And now
he was misled by Dean Acheson in these forever wars. It was perpetual war for perpetual peace. That was the United States doctrine from 1948 on. And that has to stop. Mm-hmm. But it's continued. And I do think that with this Trump administration, it is a chance to stop this global push for this global one world government. And whether people want to admit it's real or not, it is. Mm-hmm. We have... and the problem with these global elites that happen to be Democrats, these neocons, is they seem to fool themselves into thinking they're going to be in control of the New World Order, and they're not. It's going to be China, and we will be a subsidiary of China by 2040. And finally, if I would say one thing we have to do as Americans also is we need to get healthy, because no matter who, the Democrats or Republicans, we're going to go bankrupt by 2040 if we don't get our health under control. And God bless Robert Kennedy for putting all his
Amen.
The history of
His
the
life?
Kennedy. He's
put his whole life into protecting the environment and trying to bring better health to Americans and to children.
And to go and risk everything to support Donald Trump because he realizes that's the best chance. Because he also reached out to the Kamala Harris campaign, and it's very telling that they didn't even call him back.
Mm-hmm.
But for him,
he tried not to make his "Make America Healthy Again" thing a political thing.
Yeah,
he wants everybody to be healthy.
Yeah.
Republicans, Democrats, our kids. They're the ones who can't look at him, even though he's a lifelong Democrat,
I know,
through anything other than their Trump derangement syndrome glasses.
It is sad. And I will say that, like, we need to get, and if I would beg your listeners, 8,000 to 10,000 steps a day, stay away from the center of the grocery store.
Right.
And keep your kids, get them to eat, grow your own food, and it's not going to cause global boiling, as they say. And we got to really make America healthy again. And think about the poisoning that's happening to us. And thankfully, they're starting to wake up to the fluoride in the water and all the poisons in it. If you just look at the Fruit Loops, what they send in Canada, that's been talked about.
That was alarming.
Yeah, and then what we're allowed to do here. We do have to get our kids healthy. And unfortunately, we have 54% of our kids now suffer from chronic illnesses that were unheard of when you and I were kids. And that is just, there's no future for that. We have to get our kids healthy. We have to stop poisoning them.
Imagine a world in which Trump is president and RFKJ is in there overseeing like the FDA.
Can you imagine?
It would be amazing.
Yeah.
And changing the regulations so all these guys who are in charge of the food supply are not allowed to take money from these disgusting corporations
Even
that are
more.
buying their loyalty.
Even the pharmaceutical companies, it's a revolving door between being the head of Merck
Same
and then
thing.
all of a sudden you're at the CDC.
Same thing.
Like Julie Gerberding was at the head of the vaccine
Scott Gottlieb.
manufacturing. Yeah, and there's
Pfizer.
We have to put a firewall there, and Kennedy will be the firewall if we get enough support to get
No
Trump.
one understands the problem as well as he does. No one's been focusing on it
Yeah.
like he has. First of all, there's zero interest in doing this on the Dem side. We have about as much chance of anything happening on the Dem side as we do of them busting up unions. If she gets, they're just completely in bed with all these industries. And Trump is the only chance in getting actual change. This is what many of the doctors and the experts were saying at that hearing. They were saying, look, people are waking up, like you said.
Yeah.
They're starting to learn on their own. And there's an ecosystem within the podcast world that's talking about this more and more. But they were all making the point, why should all the burden be on the people? They have jobs, they have kids, they have things they need to worry about. They're the lifeblood of the American economy. The government should not be allowing this. And far from stopping it, they're promoting it. They're the cause of it.
Well, we have capture of agency, and I think people talk about it euphemistically, but the result of it is what is so tumultuous and so heartbreaking. And when you talked about earlier how I originally got canceled, and it was simply I had parents who had vaccine-injured children and who knew that their kids were okay and talking and walking and were ahead of their markers for where they're supposed to be at that age. And then they weren't okay because they got 7 or 11 different doses of 4 different or 6 different vaccines before the age of 2. And all of a sudden they couldn't talk anymore. And they say, well, there's, that's not evidence. I'm sorry, it is. It's direct evidence. And what we have to do is, I choose to believe these parents, and I still do. And no matter what the risk is, we have to protect the most vulnerable members and the most precious members of our society, our children. And that's why it's so important that we turn this chronic illness around. And we don't have a long time to do it. We have to, my dad was on 12 medications when he passed away at the age of 68. And that wasn't making him healthier. So what we do, and God bless our medical system, if you have a heart attack, a stroke,
break a leg
or stabbed or shot, which is, I was just in New York City for a couple of days, and there's wasn't a small percentage of that actually happening. But the best, urgent care in the world if you need it. But for curing anything, they're just not trained, or there's no incentive to do that.
Acute injuries that's one thing. You can trust the medical system.
The body
long term is a different story. They have bad incentives.
They do. And so, but getting rid of this capture of agencies is urgent. And we don't have a tremendous time to do it when we have 80% of Americans are overweight, or I should say unhealthy, and 35% are obese. And they're being poisoned. I mean, the fact that the cigarette companies were going to go out of business and they were drummed out, even though it took 30 years after they knew it was causing cancer to drum them out. And they were able to buy Big Agra. They were able to buy...
And make that terrible food just as addictive as their cigarettes.
They said, we're going to keep you scientists. We're going to figure out how to make this stuff just as addictive as cigarettes.
You're very useful.
And they did.
Why were you canceled for believing what you believe? Why is it not okay to say that?
Because there's some...
have those views.
There's some red lines. You can talk about, like 60 Minutes. They'll do a report on the Army costing $25,000 for a toilet, and for a screwdriver. But you're not going to talk about, they won't do a report in 60 Minutes about the military industrial complex, the pharmaceutical industrial complex. And as I say in the book, the drug cartels in Mexico is just a measly $10 billion. That's just, that's nothing. That's less than like one drug. If Merck or Pfizer thought they could only make $10 billion on a drug, they wouldn't waste their time on it. The pharmaceutical industries is $350 billion a year, and they want to crank that up to $750 by 2030. These people do not, they want you drugged up from cradle to grave. And if you look up their business report, if you want to invest in Pfizer, they go from cradle to grave drugs. That's their. It's not about health. So if you go after power, they're going to come after you, and they're going to try to destroy you. But at a certain point, and you have to be judicious about this.
And by the way, they did it to RFKJ. That's really why he was dubbed persona non grata for all these years.
And I've tried to skirt it and still kind of work here and there. But at a certain point, you have to go, well, this will fall because it's tyranny. And tyranny, just like the Iron Curtain, and James Lindsay talks about this more eloquently than I do. I'm just a comedian. But what happens with tyrannies, like the Iron Curtain, they just seem like they're going to go on forever, but they collapse, and they collapse very quickly. And what we're seeing is the tyranny of government captured agencies, the tyranny of pharma, because people did wake up to it, and it could collapse very quickly. And that's why I'm so hopeful that RFK can get in there with Trump.
It's one of the blessings of COVID.
Yes, one of the blessings of COVID is that just like Napoleon's army, when they stretched, like pharmaceutical industry stretched out, and I knew by 2014, I said, these people are so powerful. They're controlling the medical boards, and they're, you've gone from 3 shots to now it's 72 different vaccines.
Including one for an STD that we're giving to babies.
Yeah, and on the day one. And that was only because the Bush administration in 1990 said, the Merck administration, you can look this up in the New York Times, they said, we're not going to have and the HPV, for the Hep B, which is a sexually transmitted and drug transmitted through needles.
Yeah.
But it was for teenagers and young adults, but they weren't taking it. And they said, we're not going to have an orphan drug out there. If adults won't take it, we'll give it to babies. And when you have a corrupted agency like the CDC and the FDA, then this went into practice, and now babies are getting it on day one. So are we going to turn it around? And I would just say this to people. I would say there's going to be no Marines that are going to come rescue us. There's going to be no food drop in the United States. There'll be no Marshall Plan for the United States. We are our own Marines. We're going to have to do everything we can. And for those people who are feeling defeated or listening to the illiberal intelligentsia telling you that the election's close, it isn't. Far more people are going to vote for Republicans than Trump. Whether they will be able to pull it off, whether somehow some machinations will come into play that I don't fully understand. I will just say this, that during COVID, you had 30% that were fanatical in believing the government and, whatever they say they go with. And 30% went along with it because it was just easier. But you had 30% of Americans, roughly 80 million Americans, that said, you know what, F you. This is tyranny. We're not going along with it. Mm-hmm. And if we want to do the numbers, that is roughly the same amount that was able to defeat in the Revolutionary War, the greatest military power of its day, a ragtag group of.
The reference to the military is not coming to save you reminded me of something my husband said, and he was exactly right about Trump and the mean tweets and how there are a lot of people who might be inclined to vote for him and definitely not for her, but he's controversial and he can be kind of an asshole. It's like, I don't know if I can. My husband made the allusion to A Few Good Men, and he said, we need him on that wall. That's like, you're not meant to be in love with Colonel Jessup, but we do need him on that wall because the alternative, the people he's fighting, are the ones who really we have to defeat. We have to make sure that they don't get 4 more years of policy control and all that. So you don't have to love him. You don't have to particularly love his manner, or the way he speaks, or the way he treats everybody around him.
You don't. We're not asking you to hug him. He's not going to come into your living room.
No, you don't have to have dinner with him. You don't have to tweet with him.
But here's what you get with Trump. You get somebody who kicked out the World Health Organization, which is a captured agency by that ghoul Bill Gates, and who admits that he makes $20 for every dollar he invests into the vaccine empire. He gets $20 back. He's not a philanthropist. He's a profit-making guy who feeds off people's illnesses, and that's how he decides to make money. He's not a good person, Bill Gates, and you can just look at what happened to him in India and in Africa for the trail of misery that he's left behind.
Vaccines
but here's what you get from Trump, is that there is a move in the Democratic Party, and the Biden administration wanted to go along with it, to give over our sovereignty to unelected groups to make decisions for us. And that is traitor. That is traitorous. That is a traitor to your own country. We cannot give away our sovereignty to anybody. And anyone who does that is a traitor to this country. That is the existential threat, if there ever was one.
Not a mean tweet.
Not a mean tweet.
Rob, I got to run. I love it. You can do it just like Rob is doing it right here. You can speak your mind, America. Check it out. It's by Rob Schneider. As you can see, he's well worth spending time with. Get the book. Have a great weekend. Good luck with this.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure. And I'm glad I follow you and I support you.
Oh, gosh.
And you're great.
It's a thrill, honestly. Wonderful. I hope we do it again.
Thank you very much.
And we'll be back on Monday with VDH. Have a great weekend.